match is going to go down. Let's jump straight into the Pokemon action and kick off these global finals with Caleb versus Wolfe. I'm certainly excited to see which Pokemon they're going to be leading out with, and Wolfe is leading with a classic combination of Dragapult and Colossal. Caleb going for Tapu Fini and Grimmsnarl, and I really like this lead coming out from Caleb, knowing that the Colossal could be the lead for Wolfe. You need to be able to have your water-type Pokemon out on the field so that you can apply a lot of damage potentially to that opposing Colossal. The Grimmsnarl, like you mentioned, Lee, though, is going to be a critical Pokemon for him, so it's good he's got that out front.
Yeah, and this is like really nice for Caleb. Like you've mentioned there, he can pressure that Colossal and really kind of make Wolfe think twice about maybe that might not be the Pokemon that he wants to go forward with, especially going for that Gigantamax. And that's exactly what we're going to see. It is forced out here, and really good work here from Caleb.
Yeah, I love this switch from Wolfe as well, knowing that the Tapu Fini is going to be a good option for the Colossal. Decides to switch in the Rillaboom, a Pokemon that Tapu Fini will fear to face, particularly as the grassy terrain is now in effect. Any grass type moves from that Rillaboom will be boosted up. Going to be setting up the light screen, though, from the Grimmsnarl, as Dragapult goes for a light screen as well. So screens a piece for both of our players here in this very first battle, and Tapu Fini utilizes the opportunity to go for the Calm Mind. So doesn't want to target down the Colossal straight away, decides to set up raising its special attack and its special defense as well going into the next turn. Shame it's not a defense boost though when you're facing down against a Rillaboom.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for Caleb. He's doing all the right things, you know, getting set up for that potential Gigantamax on the Colossal there. But Wolfe playing it very smartly, getting the Rillaboom on the field. And, you know, even if the Calm Mind comes out from Caleb, he's now on the other hand of this player where he's really forced to switch out. Because the Tapu Fini is so pivotal to his win condition here. If he loses the Tapu Fini, then Colossal has a pretty free time against Caleb's team. So he really needs to make sure that he protects that as best he can. Maybe switch it out here. But then does Wolfe play into that a little bit and maybe predict a switch out, knowing how pressured this Tapu Fini is on his side of the field. Now, the Rillaboom does have the option to go for Fake Out here, but it can just go for an attack into that Tapu Fini slot just to try and cover if it does try to stay in.
Well, a change up here from Kayla, bringing the Rotom Heat out onto the field. Again, a Pokemon that can apply good pressure to that opposing Rillaboom and maybe help the Tapu Fini out with its longevity on the field. But Tapu Fini going to double up its HP stat by going for the Dynamax. And this isn't something we see very often. Tapu Fini normally has enough bulk on its own to kind of stay around on the field and start doing some disruption. But particularly when you've got that boost up from the Calm Mind, why not? Rillaboom going for the Grassy Glide into Tapu Fini does a decent chunk of damage as Dragapult goes for the Will-O-Wisp. Of course, does not affect the Fire-type Rotom that has switched in, as Tapu Fini is able to go for the Max Starfall into that Dragapult, not only doing super effective damage, picking up the solid KO there, but also resetting the field to that misty terrain. No more grassy terrain boost coming for that Rillaboom into the next couple of turns, and if there were any more status inflictions coming on, any potential Will-O-Wisps, they wouldn't be happening on those grounded Pokemon either.
Yeah, and it's a really nice play, not for just the reasons you've listed there, Luke, but it takes away one of the options that Wolfe has to activate the Steam Engine ability on that Colossal, which you rely on so heavily, you know, to activate that with a potential Surf, activate the weakness policy at the same time, and that's kind of the trending strategy you would see on Gmax Colossal. Now, without that out the picture, it makes it very easy for the Tapu Fini to kind of take advantage of this situation. Still has to be worried about the Rillaboom, but with taking the grassy terrain away, you know, the Tapu Fini on Caleb's end done all it needs to here. The Rotom Heat also pressuring the Rillaboom on Wolfe's side of the field, so not in the greatest spot as we do see Urshifu hit the field for Wolfe now.
Exactly, the Urshifu, and it is that Rapid Strike variant as well, so can apply a lot of pressure to the Rotom here. And once again, we are really seeing, I know I talk about it a lot, but that Fire, Water, Grass core, that triangle is constantly coming into effect in this battle. There's been a lot of switches to make sure that you have an offensive pressure against one of your partner's Pokemon in terms of that type advantage.
Yeah, and one of the options that Wolfe has now is he can switch his Rillaboom out and switch in the Colossal, go for an Aqua Jet maybe, and get that Steam Engine boosted that way. But it's very risky because the Tapu Fini is already on +1 if it attacks into that slot, and if it is something that maybe Caleb kind of hints at, indicates it might happen, then it could get a little bit awkward.
Instead, it's just going to be the Surging Strikes going into the Grimmsnarl. 1 critical hit, 2 critical hits, and we know that a third one will follow as well. Such a unique move coming out from that Urshifu, but deals so much damage with those guaranteed critical hits. Tapu Fini going to go for the Max Starfall, targeting down into that Urshifu. Does, again, pick up another KO here. Oh, no, not quite. It was the Focus Sash on there. My mistake. But again, the damage coming out from this Tapu Fini is phenomenal at this stage. Rillaboom deciding to get in off the field here, which I think is quite wise here for Wolfe, because you want to be able to come back in and reset that grassy terrain so that Rillaboom has a bigger offensive pressure on the field as soon as it's able to rejoin. And it does allow Wolfe the maneuverability as well to bring this Colossal back into the fray. The fact that the Urshifu is able to still hang around on the field, like you said there, Lee, is now free to maybe go for a cheeky Aqua Jet and activate the Steam Engine and the Weakness Policy on that Colossal.
Yeah, although it's very risky doing it this turn, I feel, because are you going to be able to pick up the knockout onto that Tapu Fini with Colossal? So it might be worth, if you are Wolfe, maybe going for the Gigantamax with Colossal, going for a Max Guard, switch your Urshifu out to Rillaboom, get the terrain back in your control, hope the Rillaboom actually goes down, because then it would allow you the Urshifu back onto the field and in that position to go for the Aqua Jet. Obviously, the play that could be made here is just to Gigantamax the Colossal, go for that Aqua Jet and see if you can get enough damage onto the Tapu Fini. You've got to be mindful, though, that there is a light screen on the field still.
Yeah, that, of course, the light screen does come into effect. Very well remembered there, Lee. And Rillaboom is going to jump in, potentially maybe being a sort of a little mini sacrifice here for Wolfe in order to allow the Urshifu to come back in unscathed, only on that 1 HP of damage, even through a protect. The Tapu Fini would be able to pick up the KO there. Colossal just going to go for a protect of his own, though. No Max Guard, not wanting to waste any turns of the Dynamax. As Tapu Fini goes for the Max Geyser. Now, if this is going into that Colossal, which it is, it's going to do a huge amount of damage, but not actually quite 50%, but it's still going to be able to cause all of those activations as it is able to bypass that protect. So we will still see Steam Engine activate and the Weakness Policy as well. And this leaves Colossal in prime position to go for the Dynamax on the next turn when Tapu Fini is back down to its usual size and be able to utilize the maximum amount of turns of Dynamax.
Yeah, and now with the grassy terrain back on the field, after the Tapu Fini's finished in its Dynamax form here, then the Rillaboom is going to be able to do a lot more damage to it, become a lot more threatening. The Grimmsnarl still on the field supporting, so there is the option there to maybe go for a Reflect to kind of bypass some of the damage from the Rillaboom onto the Tapu Fini, but you're not going to be able to take these moves that well, especially if you get doubled into from Gigantamax Colossal. It's now got its Weakness Policy, its Steam Engine ability activated, and the double in on that slot is very, very dangerous. And we've already mentioned how important this Tapu Fini is for Caleb, but it will be the thing that Wolfe will be chasing down. I don't think it's a Pokemon slot at the moment that you can really leave unattacked. You can't predict here that it might protect, and even if it does protect, you might want to just Gigantamax Colossal and start getting the residual damage from the G-Max Volcalith that it does have access to.
Thus, the Wolfe has really pivoted himself into a phenomenal position here. You can apply good pressure to that Tapu Fini with the Rillaboom and now have the option to go for that late game Gigantamax with the Colossal. And like you said, Lee, something like the Volcalith with that residual damage, we've seen it time and time again where it can be the critical end point of a match and can determine who wins or loses a set. Rillaboom is going to go for the fake out, targeting down into that Tapu Fini, going to stop any water type moves coming in Wolfe's direction, as Grimmsnarl goes for the Reflect, so just wants to protect up from any of those physical type moves from the Rillaboom coming forward in the next couple of turns. As Colossal does indeed go for that G-Max Volcalith, targeting down into the Grimmsnarl, is able to pick up the KO and will now set those Volcalith rocks around as well. So chip damage will be occurring consistently on Caleb's side of the field for the next couple of turns.
Yeah, and that residual damage is going to be so important to get that Tapu Fini into a position where you can just pick up the knockout. Maybe with Grassy Glide or maybe with the double up from the Colossal. It's going to, yeah, I mean, the light screen at this point is supporting, but the Grimmsnarl now, a nice play there from Wolfe to remove that support option, because with the Spirit Break, if the Colossal is a special type variant on Wolfe's side of the field, then obviously you don't want that sitting on the field just getting Spirit Break after Spirit Break off, because you need that big damage that you're kind of relying on heavily from the Weakness Policy. Now it's going to be difficult because Wolfe's only had that one turn of his Gigantamax now. He's got 2 more turns left, so it's going to be about how Caleb can kind of stall these turns out and maybe preserve something in the late game to be able to come in and deal with it. But the first priority for him is going to be, maybe it's hard because you want to remove the Rillaboom to protect your Tapu Fini, but at the same time it's a very difficult task, especially when you do have the G-Max Colossal setup staring down at you.
Yeah, that is true. The Colossal, once it gets set up, is a formidable force, and if you're Caleb, it comes down to whether you're able to make the right decisions here to try and pick up a KO against it, or if you can play defensively, call the right protects and the right switches in order to stall out these Dynamax turns and just stop Colossal dealing the huge amount of damage that we know it is capable of doing. You can see Caleb here really trying to flick through his decisions, maybe trying to make those switches and adjustments, making sure that when the Dynamax is over, he has the Pokemon that he wants on the field facing down against Wolfe Glick's team. Going to be the switch though, and the Rotom is going to rejoin the action here in place of that Tapu Fini as Rillaboom does go for the Grassy Glide, targeting down into that Urshifu, however, breaking the potential Focus Sash on that Pokemon as the Max Flare comes out from the Colossal. Not going to be able to pick up a KO, but will critically change that weather up, bringing the Sunshine to the field, and will be able to deal more damage with Max Flares going forward. Of course, that will increase the fire type moves from that Rotom as well, so Wolf does have to be careful. Colossal able to hang on from the damage from that Urshifu, and Urshifu's defense is going to be dropping further as well. Colossal just proving sort of the defensive nature it's got here as well, able to last those attacks, Lee.
Yeah, and doing really well and really taking advantage of these Gigantamax turns. The problem now for Caleb is that the Urshifu is 100% in Grassy Glide range. He doesn't have really a switch in to take that attack in the Tapu Fini in the back, and the Rotom is really vulnerable to the G-Max Volcalith here, and if that goes down then you lose a really good way to deal with the Rillaboom here. The Colossal is in its last turn of its Gigantamax. I'm sure Wolf is going to try and make the most use out of this turn as he can, but at the minute he's set himself up with a very strong board position, and it's proven very difficult for Caleb. Now we could potentially try and protect with the Rotom here, maybe preserve the Rillaboom and get rid of the Grassy Terrain. That might be a way to do it, and then you can get the Urshifu back onto the field at some point and not have to worry about that priority Grassy Glide.
Exactly. Tapu Fini going to rejoin the field here for Caleb and set the Misty Surge once again. That's going to be reducing the damage output from that Rillaboom, paired up with the Reflect that Grimmsnarl set up earlier as well. Just making sure that Caleb has the best defenses he possibly can have at this stage. Wolfie, however, going to make an adjustment as well. Rillaboom going to hop in the back and, you know, say to Tapu Fini, I'll reset that later, don't you worry. Urshifu going to go for the Sucker Punch. So into the Colossal that is able to survive, able to retaliate with a G-Max Volcalith onto the field. Once again, going down into what was the Rotom, but instead going to connect onto that Tapu Fini that is going to be able to survive. But with the Volcalith, Urshifu is going to be KO'd. Is Tapu Fini going to be able to survive, Lee?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the Tapu Fini is going to be going down now, and it looks like it is, and it's just that lone Rotom heat left for Caleb in front of an Urshifu and the Colossal, and it's not looking really too good. I think the board position that Wolf kind of set up earlier with between the Rillaboom and the G-Max Colossal was a little bit too much, and I think the light screen support that we had at the very start from the Dragapult is coming so useful throughout this game, because without that then Colossal takes far too much damage from the Tapu Fini, even behind the Protect when it was Dynamaxed, especially after the +1, but showing how useful the Dragapult can be, not only to potentially activate Weakness Policy, Steam Engine and things like that, but also to provide that supporting role for the team.
Well, there's going to be a Protect coming out from Wolf's side here. Rotom going to go for the Thunderbolt, connecting to the Protect of the Urshifu. And Rotom, of course, going to be taking that additional damage hit from the Volcalith while the light screen wears off. Really wise double Protect there from Wolf, of course, just allowing a little bit more chip damage on the Rotom, but critically allowing that light screen to go away. So Colossal has the best opportunity to deal damage in this environment. Yeah,
one of the problems, though, with the Colossal is once it's not Gigantamax anymore, players are tending to rely on one of their new move tutor moves here that uses the power up option, and it has to take 2 turns, which, you know, at this point with the health that Colossal's on, it doesn't really have the room to do that. So you're going to have to stall the sun out here if you are Wolf, and try and get something like Urshifu back on the field, and then once the sun's gone you'll be able to pick up the knockout.
Rotom able to survive on 2 HP and manages to eat its berry as well. You know, the Sunshine up there for Colossal. Not enough to pick up the KO. Rotom going to go for that Thunderbolt, connecting down into the Rillaboom that's just joined the field. But unfortunately, I do think that Rotom is going to be on a little bit of borrowed time at this moment. Grassy Terrain just going to be helping regain a little bit of HP as well.
Yeah, now with the fake out support from the Rillaboom that we've already seen, it's going to be more than enough to be able to deal with the Rotom now, especially between that and the Heat Wave, which I was surprised how much that did that last turn. I know it is weakness policy boosted in the sun, but still, you know, it's resisted an attack and it did a phenomenal amount to the Rotom.
Yeah, it did do a huge chunk of damage, and it has enabled Wolfe Glick to be able to take game 1 here at the Global Finals. And I mean, that was a game that it was actually so intense for a match that had a lot of switching, a lot of changes in the ball positioning. The fact that it was kind of coming down like a game of chess, and the actual turns playing every single time was so pivotal, and if you messed up one turn, then it was going to really kind of roll the boulder in the opposite direction you wanted it to roll in. And I think from Wolfe Glick's side of things, that Colossal was a key critical piece, and although he lost the Dragapult quite early on, wasn't able to go for that surf strategy we've seen before, it enabled Caleb to actually activate the weakness policy and the steam engine for Wolfe, so the Colossal was still in a phenomenal position without Wolfe actually having to do the setup himself.
Yeah, and I think that it really did backfire on him in the end there, which was a little bit unfortunate, because at the start of the game you felt like Wolfe was taking so much damage on his Pokemon. He was forced out with the Colossal, like we mentioned. The pressure with the Tapu Fini and that Grimmsnarl lead was just a phenomenal lead from Caleb, and probably his best lead as well. But he wasn't able to kind of get the most out of Tapu Fini, unfortunately. He got rid of the Dragapult, great. He got the Urshifu down to its sash. It would have been nice to remove that from the field, I think. If you remove the Urshifu in that situation, rather than just take it down to its sash, then the end game might become a little bit easier. But you know, once you lose that Tapu Fini, once you switched it off the field because of the position that it was in from the Rillaboom, it just became very difficult to kind of build any momentum from there. And like you say, a little bit like a chess game, Lou, how patient Wolfe was with that G-Max Colossal, knowing, just picking that moment perfectly with that Tapu Fini from Caleb's end too. No, I've got the light screen up, I can protect, I can take this attack and get all the boosts I need, and then the next turn is when I can go for that Gigantamax and theirs ends, and that's when the show for me really starts. So really nicely played, but such tight margins in that first one.
It certainly was, and the Volcalith came into effect quite dramatically as well, being able to pick up those 2 KOs in one turn as well, really putting Caleb with just that Rotom heat to sort of champion him through the match, and unfortunately it wasn't meant to be there. But Colossal being so strong, and Wolfe really thinking a couple of turns ahead, enabled him to get that ball position that he wanted. But let's jump into game 2 and see how things are going to go down in that match, whether Wolfe is going to stick with the Colossal strategy or shake it up with his incredibly versatile team. But sticking with the champions of that match, it is the Colossal paired up with the Dragapult, as Grimmsnarl and Tapu Fini come out for Caleb. So no changes here from the leads of our players. But I think if you are Caleb in this situation, you have to play very strongly around that Colossal. You can't allow it to get set up. You have to make sure that you are removing the threats without accidentally causing the activation for yourself. And again, if you're Wolfe, you maybe want to try and preserve that Dragapult. But I wouldn't be surprised, Lee, to see the light screens go up once again.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense to get that light screen support, preserve and support the Tapu Fini on Caleb's side of the field, and also makes sense for Wolfe as well. We saw how important it was in that first game here, but we're going diving straight in with a Gigantamax from the Colossal on Wolfe's side of the field, not opting to preserve it this time, and maybe playing on a few mind games that could be swirling around both players' heads going into this first one. I think we will. Oh, we're just seeing a Protect here from the Tapu Fini.
Oh, lots of changes. A more offensive start from Wolfe here, going for the Surf on that Dragapult, going to be connecting onto the Grimmsnarl and the Colossal, activating the Steam Engine and the Weakness Policy, and doing a little bit of damage to the Grimmsnarl. Unfortunate critical hit there on the Colossal, but Colossal will still appreciate the dash of water being thrown its way in order to enable all of these boosts and making it a really formidable threat. So straight away from this turn 1, Wolfe has the option to go for an offensive move, going for that Max Flare straight down into the Grimmsnarl. Does a huge chunk of damage and actually is able to pick up a solid KO against it, removing Caleb's option to set up those light screens and reflect. With the light clay on that Grimmsnarl holding those moves for 8 turns, really was sort of a thorn in Wolfe's side throughout that game, and to be able to remove that here in turn 1 means he doesn't have to worry about it going forward. What a great play.
Yeah, that is a really big advantage now. You don't need to worry about any support from that Grimmsnarl, and it is one Pokemon down for Caleb as well, reducing his numbers that he's got on his side of the field. And especially in these sorts of situations against such a powerful Pokemon like the Gigantamax Colossal, you know, it has got all those activations now. It's going to be very strong. You're going to need to try and either utilize a Dynamax or a Gigantamax from your side of the field, or you're going to have to try and stall these Gigantamax turns out, which comes at a cost if the G-Max Volcalith does get set up.
Yeah, the Urshifu here on the field is quite an interesting choice as well. It can obviously apply a lot of pressure to the Dragapult with any sort of dark type moves. Potentially something like a Sucker Punch here could do some good damage, but then you have to be careful because if Dragapult wants to go for a light screen, then the Sucker Punch is going to be null and void. And honestly, if you're Caleb, your big threat is going to be that Colossal, but you also don't want to fall victim to a potential Max Guard, just weakening yourself and leaving yourself exposed for that Dragapult to either have the opportunity to set up the screens or go for an offensive attack.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about as well is that the sun is up, so your water type attacks are going to be weakened as well. And yeah, here we go. It's a big G-Max Volclith into that Tapu Fini. It does manage to just hang on though.
Yeah, just able to hang on, but the Volcalith has now set the rocks once again, and that residual damage is going to come in critical, something Caleb has to keep an eye on, especially as that light screen has now just come into effect. Urshifu not able to pick up a KO with that close combat, but does do a huge chunk of damage, severely weakening that Colossal going forward. As Tapu Fini goes for the Muddy Water and is able to connect, despite the sun, it will be able to pick up a KO against that Colossal with another critical hit. Unfortunately, this Colossal is just taking critical hits left, right, and center from these water type moves. The one move it does not want to take critical hits from. And critically going to be, doing some damage to that Dragapult as well, breaking the Focus Sash potentially on there. But Tapu Fini here going to be, just hanging on with 6 HP.
Just hanging on there, Lou, and recovering a little bit through that leftovers that it is holding. But it's a nice play there from Caleb, getting rid of that G-Max Colossal the way he has done. The survival there with the Tapu Fini just meant it could do enough with that Muddy Water to remove it from the field after the close combat. We saw the damage from game 1, so he knew how much to expect from that. And now the next task for Caleb is that Rillaboom that's just hitting the field. But the thing that Caleb does have in the bag still is his ability to Dynamax something. So he's still got that ability to take advantage of now. And the Urshifu feels like a very strong Pokemon, especially in front of the Dragapult here. Especially if Light Reflect goes up from that Dragapult, you can kind of bypass that with the Wicked Blows that it's got access to.
Exactly, being able to still have that option of that late game Dynamax, like you said, Lee, can be so critical. It can really turn the ball position into your favour. Tapu Fini, of course, does have to worry about this Rillaboom. It's got the terrain up that it wants as well. It can apply a lot of pressure with something like a Fake Out or even just a Grassy Glide at this situation, particularly with the range that the health of Caleb's Pokemon are at. But Thundurus is actually going to join the field, a new face into this particular set as Urshifu goes for the Detect, who just wants to protect herself from that potential Fake Out and just not take any damage this turn, as Dragapult does go for that Will-O-Wisp that it did reveal in game 1, so a wise Protect there from the Urshifu. Rillaboom also going for the knockoff, so good Protect there from Caleb, and is able to get that Thundurus onto the field. But I think the critical thing here as well is it does give Thundurus the opportunity to now switch out, bring back in the Tapu Fini, set that Misty Terrain, and that will weaken any Grass type moves from the Rillaboom and stop Will-O-Wisp from activating.
Yeah, that might be a really nice play here for Caleb, because you can almost get the Tapu Fini, and like you say, for that Thundurus, you can let it go down to the residual damage from the Max Volcalith and then get Thundurus back onto the field, at the same time protecting Urshifu and potentially taking down the Dragapult on Wolf's side of the field, because at the minute the Dragapult threatening the Thundurus with a big Will-O-Wisp that will really hinder its ability to do big damage, and it does rely heavily on that physical side of its attack, so it really needs to be protected, and taking down the Dragapult is one way to do it, and that's definitely a play that you could see coming out here.
Yeah, Tapu Fini is going to rejoin the field here, and I think I mentioned earlier we could have accidentally sort of broken the Focus Sash on that Tapu Fini, on the Dragapult, but no, we've seen it on the Urshifu already, so you know that you're going to be able to take down this Dragapult potentially in one hit, so you don't have to worry about that. Tapu Fini bringing the Mist there is going to protect the Urshifu from that Will-O-Wisp, leaving the Urshifu free to go for that Wicked Blow, picks up the solid KO against the Dragapult, which will now have to jump right back into its Pokeball for Wolf. But this does, of course, give him the option to now bring in his fourth and final Pokemon. Rillaboom going to be able to leave the field, and I love this play here by Wolf, because Rillaboom leaves the field, the fourth and final Pokemon will join the field, but then Rillaboom gets to come in for the KO Dragapult and reset that terrain.
Yeah, the terrain control here from Wolf is really well thought out. He's going to be able to come in again now with that Rillaboom. The Tapu Fini is going to go down, and the Thundurus is going to be able to come onto the field, but you do have access to Fake Out to at least slow down potentially the Urshifu that is beside the Thundurus that will be coming out onto the field for Caleb. But yeah, I think the Thundurus now is one of those Pokemon, when you get rid of, if you look at Wolf's team here, once you get rid of the Colossal and that Dragapult with the Will-O-Wisp that we now know it has, it becomes a very easy game for Thunderous to kind of start closing things out. So it's going to be very difficult for Wolfe, and he needs to prioritize this Pokemon to really stop it from getting so much momentum, because it is and has got the ability to Dynamax here. And once it starts going, you know, with those max airstreams, it's going to be able to pick up knockouts quite easily on both Pokemon. Maybe you want to... it's hard protecting in front of an Urshifu as well if you're Caleb. You know, you want to try and preserve your Urshifu, but there is the temptation to protect here. But if Wolfe plays into that, the Unseen Fist ability is going to be able to just play through the protect and pick up a knockout.
It certainly is, but I think this is quite a wise choice here from Caleb, going for the Dynamax on the Thunderous, and able to go for those max airstreams. Like you said, Lee, they're going to be able to deal really big damage to both of the opposing Pokemon here, and it does just enable Thunderous to have that extra longevity on the field. I mean, it's very rare that we see a Dynamax preserved this late into the game. It would also stop that fake out from going into the Thunderous. Going into the Urshifu, of course, going to flinch as Thunderous goes for the max airstream, targeting it down into the opposing Urshifu, takes it down to its focus sash. And now will also allow Caleb the ability to have the speed boosted up on his side of the field as well. Of course, that won't have any effect against Grassy Glide potentially coming out from that Rillaboom, but it does still allow that nice side effect to guarantee Thunderous will be nice and speedy. The critical hit coming into the Thunderous, able to take, I think, all of these really, really well from that Rapid Strike variant, of course, with the Surging Strikes. And it does just sort of, again, showcase how having that Dynamax, getting that extra HP really does help you out on the field.
Yeah, definitely. And now Caleb in a phenomenal position. Still got to worry about the Urshifu, obviously down on its sash here. You're going to have to kind of take that down now, and then hopefully not take too much damage from this opposing Rillaboom. It might be worth checking how many turns of the terrain you've got left to kind of work through, because obviously the grass type attacks are going to be hitting a lot less without the grassy terrain. And although it has just been set up, you know, there is a long way to go, and you want to utilize these Dynamax turns. I think going into the Urshifu now makes the most sense. Get rid of that and then concentrate down to the Rillaboom the next turn.
Yeah, Urshifu going to go for the Aqua Jet, just getting that priority damage out there. It's going to be the Max Lightning coming out from the Thunderous, so this is going to be able to pick up the KO against Urshifu, and I think critically, like you just mentioned, Lee, going to override that terrain as well. So no more grassy terrain, going to be weakening the damage that the Rillaboom can be dealing at this stage. Of course, not going to be able to get the benefits from it itself, as it is a flying type up in the air, but I think critically being able to weaken that Rillaboom is going to be pivotal. But instead, just going straight for that knockoff and taking the Life Orb away as well. This actually gets slightly interesting at this point. There's no more grassy terrain for a priority Grassy Glide, and although there's no Life Orb, it means Thunderous can't take that additional damage in recoil. So depending how much damage this Max Airstream does, this could be a very interesting sort of end game situation. It looks like it picks up the solid KO against the Rillaboom.
That's a massive play there. You know, what a fantastic end game there from Caleb. Phenomenal. You know, I was talking about needing to stall out the grassy terrain, but no, showing me a thing or two. He doesn't need to. He's got the Max Lightning. He can take that grassy terrain away, prevent the Grassy Glide, and the knockoff there, so close to picking up the knockout, but really doing Caleb a favour there with taking away that residual damage, like you mentioned, from the Life Orb recall that it would take, you know. So very, very interesting game. And I think the way that we saw Colossal come out from Wolfe, it set up very early and started really doing a lot of work and getting a good return for those Gigantamax. But then when you saw the Urshifu hit the field for Caleb, and he obviously had a game plan in mind, you know, it was let's get the Colossal off the field now, because once that has gone, this game gets a lot easier. And he played it so well to kind of preserve that Thunderous till that last spot. He's got, like, if you look at Wolfe's team as well, he's got a lot of problems with flying types, especially if the Colossal isn't there. You know, the Colossal is the way to deal with most of those, and once those that Pokemon is gone, then Thunderous is kind of a little bit free to do what it wants.
Yeah, and we saw that at the end of the game in such phenomenal style. I mean, the Max Airstream going into that Rillaboom that was, you know, incredibly healthy. Being able to pick up that solid KO against it was phenomenal for Caleb. And, you know, I was a little bit concerned with the knockoff there, because maybe it needed the Life Orb to be able to pick up the KO, but then if it didn't get the KO and would KO itself to Life Orb recoil, that could have been a really sort of sad end there for Caleb. But then when it lost the Life Orb, I was like, oh gosh, is it going to be able to pick up the KO? Is it going to be able to do this? And it did. So amazing play from the Thunderous coming in late game there. A really good choice of the four to bring forward to that match for Caleb. And having that late game Dynamax, I think, really, really paid off. And, you know, if we throw back to kind of game one, Wolfe had that late game Gigantamax as well with his Colossal. So potentially that could be the strategy to try to pull out this set.
Yeah, and the other thing to mention, I think, from that last game, Lou, was the critical hit from the Surf on the Colossal, you know? I think that probably played into how easy that Colossal went down. You think about the critical hit from the Muddy Water from the Tapu Fini. Maybe it would have been a different scenario if we didn't see those critical hits, but this is Pokemon, you know, these things do happen. You've got to consider these things, but it would be interesting to see if Wolfe just goes with the same game plan, because it feels very solid. If you can kind of remove the Urshifu threat and the Tapu Fini threat, things get very easy if you've still got a very healthy Colossal on the field. And the Dragapult feels like it's the kind of support Pokemon to be able to do all the jobs that you want if you're Colossal. It's got the screen support and that Will-O-Wisp, which is a really nice feature for the you know, to take advantage of and really restrict what the physical attackers on Caleb's side of the field are doing. But all the information's out on the field now. You know, these both players have an idea of what the other one's trying to do in game. So, you know, I think Caleb probably wants to stick with the same game plan. I think get to an end game where the Colossal's not an issue, Dragapult's not there, and let's try and get Thundurus going. But now Wolfe's going to have to be aware of that end game and maybe have to have a little bit more of a game plan against that, because I don't think it was maybe something that was super expected to say. I don't know, but you know, it really overwhelmed when it came onto the field in that great situation at the end game for Caleb.
Yeah, it certainly did. So let's jump into game 3 and see out of Wolfe and Caleb who is going to be able to take this set in the battle of the Urshifus and the battle of the terrain as well. Grassy, misty terrain. It keeps changing every single turn at the moment, Lee. But Wolfe going to be leading out, and so is Caleb with the same Pokemon they've gone for in each game of this set. So we've got Colossal and the Dragapult there for Wolfe, with Grimmsnarl and Tapu Fini for Caleb. And both of these turn ones have been so different. In game 1, they both were going for that kind of setup play, getting the light screens on the field and getting themselves ready for that longevity of the game. But the last game, Wolfe went straight on the offensive. Lee, what do you think is going to happen in game 3?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of mind games going on now. I think it's a bit easier if you're Caleb. You've got kind of set game plan in mind where you want to try and get the screen support up with your Grimmsnarl. You know that's going to be invaluable to you to see out these potential Gigantamax turns here if you're staring down at the Gmax Colossal like we're probably just about to see. But again, if you're Wolfe, it worked game 1. I think if you just adapt that back party Pokemon that you've got to help you a little bit better against the Thundurus, I don't see why you would really change too much going into this first turn in game 3.
Exactly. Well, Wolfe not changing things with the Colossal, going straight for the Gigantamax here, and Tapu Fini going for a Protect. Things are playing out very similarly to how we saw in game 1. Grimmsnarl, however, going to go straight for that light screen, boosting it up onto the field, going to be preserving the Pokemon on Caleb's side from those special type attacks, as the Dragapult does go for that Surf, of course going into protect Tapu Fini, doing a little bit of chip to the Grimmsnarl and to the Colossal, but I don't see a critical hit this time, Lee, as Colossal is able to activate its Steam Engine ability, boost its speed up super duper high, and also activate that weakness policy, bringing the attack and special attack stats up 2 stages. Colossal going for that Gmax Volcalith, no surprises here, going to be able to target down into Tapu Fini, not going to deal too much through the protect, but critically setting up those rocks straight away. And I think that's the key thing here, getting that residual damage very early on so you can keep chipping away at all of Caleb's Pokemon.
Yeah, and that's a really nice way to look at it, because the Grimmsnarl on Caleb's side of the field, if you are Wolfe, it's not really posing too much of a threat right now. It can set the screens up, but it's always going to be able to do that because of that Prankster ability. Now, the Pokemon to really concentrate on is going to be that Tapu Fini here. If you can potentially get your light screen set up now with your Dragapult, maybe get a Max Flare into that Grimmsnarl, and then worry about the Tapu Fini the next turn. You haven't taken that critical hit like you did in game 2 either, like you mentioned, Lou, from the Dragapult support Surf. So you're in a much better position if you are the Colossal, but I think Caleb's still got a good game plan in front of him, but we are going to see the Rillaboom hit the field for Wolfe, which changes things up dramatically going into this next turn.
Yeah, getting the Grassy Surge, Grassy Terrain onto the field here, going to be able to apply a lot of pressure going into that next turn if Rillaboom is able to hang on. Grimmsnarl going to go straight for the taunt that was going into that Dragapult, would have stopped any screens coming up from the Dragapult on Wolfe's side, so quite a wise switch there. As Colossal actually goes for the the Max Overgrowth from the Gigantamax Colossal into Tapu Fini, picks up a solid KO. Oh my goodness, the Oh my, the Rillaboom coming in, setting up that terrain, boosting up. I was not expecting that, Lee. I'm literally speechless, tongue-tied, everything. Oh my goodness.
You know, it's always the option there as well for Wolf, but it's not really the expected thing. You think in that situation, let's get our light screen up now. Let's get ourselves in a nice position. Let's kind of hunker down and start getting the most out of this Gigantamax Colossal. But to pull such a switch right there, and I think that's probably been on the tip of Wolf's tongue this whole kind of set. Can I get rid of that Tapu Fini by making this play? And it was a perfect opportunity, I think, kind of lulling Caleb into a false sense of security through those first 2 games where he didn't expect that to be played at all, and going for that reveal of the Max Overgrowth to remove the Tapu Fini makes things so much easier now for the Colossal and so much harder for Caleb.
Yeah, that was such a phenomenal turn. I think I've just about calmed down now. Caleb able to bring the Urshifu here onto the field. Going to be able to, you know, start applying a big damage again. We know how much the close combat can do to that Colossal. It's not enough, I believe, to pick up the KO at this range, but potentially following up with something like a Spirit Break from the Grinsnarl, lowering that special attack as well, can just start chipping away at the Colossal. Rillaboom, however, is going to be a problem, particularly as it's got its terrain up, and Caleb has lost the Pokemon that he usually needs to be able to bring in and override the terrain. So Rillaboom's going to be sitting pretty for a while. Urshifu going to go straight for that Detect, though, preserving itself from a potential fake out from Wolf's Rillaboom, which is, however, it's going down into that Grimmsnarl. So Grimmsnarl going to be able to move on this turn as Colossal goes for that Max Flare, targeting down into the Urshifu. Going to do about quarter damage there, but I think critically set up that Sun as well. So those Max Flares and Fire-type moves will be dealing even more damage going forward. And if you're Caleb, you're going to have to watch out.
Yeah, you've got the combination of potentially the Heat Wave the next turn, boosted by that Sun, like you say, is just being set up, Lou, from that Max Flare. And you also have the threat of the Rillaboom with these Grassy Glides that it's got access to. Now, Caleb still is sitting on a potential Dynamax, so potentially whatever he's got in the back could come in and be the Dynamax Pokemon, whether it be that Thundurus again. But your main priority, again, is get rid of that Colossal if you have got the Thundurus, if you're Caleb. Now, it's going to be very difficult to do this. You have got the light screen support, but does it even cross your mind to maybe max the Urshifu? I don't know. It just feels like such a difficult position to be in right now, and you're not going to be able to get an attack off onto the Colossal before you take damage yourself. And I think at this stage, you're going to take too much damage from the offensive presence that Wolf's kind of set up on the field now. Without the Tapu Fini to come in and kind of soak up those Fire-type attacks, it makes it very difficult to kind of get any momentum back in this game.
I mean, the momentum is certainly all in Wolf's favour, and he's really put Caleb in a difficult position where there's nowhere for Caleb to hide at the moment. There's offensive pressure coming left, right and centre, and you can see that Caleb was really taking all the time there, ticking down, trying to find a way out of this difficult situation he faces. Wolf going to bring in the Dragapult, so the Rillaboom's not only safe in the back, but able to fake out again later on in the match. Urshifu going for another Protect here as Grimmsnarl goes for the Reflect, so going to be able to boost up the sort of physical defense of Caleb's side of the field. Now, Heat Wave that you mentioned, Lee, is going to come out, is going to connect onto that Grimmsnarl in the Sun and pick up a KO. So Caleb already down to his last 2 remaining Pokemon. The force coming out here from Wolf is absolutely phenomenal, and having that Dragapult out here on the field again now without the risk of taunt from the Grimmsnarl, it's going to be able to start setting up screens as well.
Yeah, and without the threat of the Misty Terrain to prevent those Will-O-Wisps, you know, that is the other big option that really threatens Caleb, and something that, you know, he's got 2 physical Pokemon on the field now, and the Thundurus has just come onto the field with that Urshifu, so, you know, Wolf's got his choice of picks here. He can go after the Urshifu if he wants to Will-O-Wisp that, or just Heat Wave and Will-O-Wisp the Thundurus here. It makes it very difficult to gain kind of any momentum here with the Thundurus. Thundurus does have access to Max Knuckle, but again, is it going to be enough to pick up the knockout into the Colossal? And, you know, it might be a way to go if you're Caleb. Go for those Max Knuckles, potentially boost your Urshifu at the same time, and hope you can maybe get a Sucker Punch and Max Knuckle into the Colossal. And will that be enough to take it down? I don't know. It's going to be very difficult from this point.
I think you're right, though, touching on the Will-O-Wisp from that Dragapult. You know, you've got 2 physical attackers here, no need to set up the light screen. And having the Will-O-Wisp here just gives you the opportunity to start negating the damage output that Caleb could have. Colossal going for that Heat Wave, picks up the KO against the Urshifu, the Steam Engine speed boost, really coming in well here for Wolf. Will-O-Wisp does avoid the Thundurus, so Thundurus able to retaliate with a Max Airstream targeting straight down into that Dragapult. Does do a really big chunk of damage, but I don't think it's enough for the KO.
Not enough. The Dragapult actually hanging on here, which is really nice. Training there from Wolfe's side of the field, you know, taking that big life orb boosted attack there from the Thundurus. But still, the Will-O-Wisp miss, very unfortunate there. You know, if that had hit, then you could probably say this game would be pretty much all but over. Unfortunate to lose the Will-O-Wisp. The Urshifu, sorry, the Will-O-Wisp, what am I talking about? The Urshifu, if you're Caleb, you know, might have been worth trying to go for a Sucker Punch into the Colossal. Just get it in range for maybe a Max Knuckle this next turn, because that is going to be one way to hit it for super effective damage. And really at this point, you're kind of hoping that you're going to be missing a Heat Wave, and you're going to be able to get that Max Knuckle and pick up the knockout onto the Colossal.
Well, Colossal does go for that Heat Wave and picks up the KO against the Thundurus, meaning that Wolfe Glick, in a very intense best-of-3 set here, is able to take winners round 1 at the Video Game Global Finals for Players Cup.
Whew. What a game, Lou. What a game.